because the next talk will be even greater, because it involves mind. We have heard about our heart, so we have set the intention. We have set the intention right to go into the world. Now we have to conquer our mind. And that's where Dr. Reeves is going to help us out. Dr. Reeves is a practicing neurologist since 1964. He has served as a department chair at the Dartmouth Medical Center. And then he was a professor of neurology over there. And I happened to share some of my patients along with him. So I was fortunate to be able to work with him for some time. And it was really profound because he does some really good work with some of the patients. The good part about him, he focuses more about holistic healing. He makes sure that every patient gets the natural healing as much as he can or she can. Today he is going to share us a little bit about brain health for youthful aging. Our brain starts aging, I believe, the day we are born. We start getting old, so our brain starts getting old. And I hope he will share some experiences and some tricks to make our brain healthy when we were 1 year old. So I welcome Dr. Reeves on board to share some information about that.
Thank you, Anshul. As an introduction, I must say that Anshul, it was very nice of you to invite me here. We did have patients together in Tappahannock. And Anshul was different from the usual primary care physician who is, they're usually wonderful people, unfortunately highly pressed, in that he also was a little bit out of the box. And what I mean by that, he doesn't practice traditional medicine alone, the politically correct approach, which we are very much against. And I'm out of the box. So two people out of the box get along pretty well. So that's important. Now, I'm going to be a little bit concrete about some of this stuff. And I'm also going to say that some of the things that I profess are certainly empiric, certainly intuitive, have a fair amount of backing, but you have to look for it. So I have at the end, I have a little handout here, which, and I have other handouts that can be available if you give Anshul your email afterwards, and they can be, PDFs can be sent to you. And I'm perfectly happy for you to contact me and question, criticize, and so forth. But what I said at the end here was your health is your responsibility. A lot of people don't realize that, and it's more so today than ever. Used to be that you said, okay, I can put myself in my physician, my healthcare provider's hands, and I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. That's not true anymore, unfortunately. So let me give you some of my concerns before we start in talking about healthy brains and keeping healthy brains. That's the thing I want to talk about. In the developed world, I'm going to talk about the developed world now mainly, and I'm going to mention other areas of the world in passing for some of the benefits that they've shown us that we've not paid attention to, and we should. In the world we live in, we've created a lot of illnesses. We have created them. And these illnesses are the ones you know about, the chronic illnesses that you consider to be everyday things, everyday phenomena. Heart disease, coronary disease. My goodness, we think about that all the time. What else do we think about? We think about cancer. Gracious, I mean, it's all around us. We've had a mission to get rid of cancer since President Nixon. That was the war on cancer. We haven't won it. In fact, it's as bad, if not worse, than it was then. So we've done something wrong. We're doing something that allows cancer to keep up and heart disease to keep up with the positive things that we're trying to do. So we need to figure out what those might be. Neurological degeneration. Everybody knows about Alzheimer's disease. Everybody, once you get past, when you consider yourself old, a 40th birthday maybe, 35th, you start thinking, well, I'm having a little trouble with my memory. Maybe I better start thinking about this. Alzheimer's disease, my granduncle, someone else in the family, a friend, so forth, it's getting to be a pretty common thing. And so we're all worried about it. We'll say some more about that in a few minutes. And also, of course, we've all witnessed in the last 3 decades the progressive rise in weight, and along with that, the progressive epidemic increase in diabetes, which causes a lot of these complications, chronic illnesses. In addition to the diabetes, it predisposes to cancer, heart disease, and dementia. So that's one of the key logs, probably, and we need to do something about that too. Now, what have we done? Well, I'm going to make it very brief. Now, by the way, please, anybody who would like to raise their hand and ask a question, ask it now. That's the best thing to do, because you might forget by the end of the talk what you wanted to ask. Yes? Handouts? The handouts, yeah. Give your email address to Anshul, to either Anshul.
But I thought you said you had one right now.
I don't have a handout right now. As a matter of fact, so we're going to talk off the cuff, and then you can read these things. They're fairly comprehensive, and they'll give you lots of sources in addition to keep yourself well. They're pretty important.
I have a few handouts. We didn't make too many copies, but if somebody wants to check those, as he said, it's pretty comprehensive. I'll just pass them around.
Now, this is just a handout. This is a short one I sent you last night, or the other one?
These are the bigger ones.
The bigger ones, okay. Okay. Don't try to read them while I'm talking. I'll try to embellish them. We cannot cover all the ground. There's no way we can cover all the ground that we should cover. It would take probably 3 or 4 hours to get started. So we're going to spend an hour sort of highlighting some areas. That's the important thing. And then you do the rest. It's important for you to do the rest. Okay. So what have our traditional medical institutions, what have they offered? Well, they've offered some magic medicines, apparatuses, operations that are sometimes quite effective and actually have prolonged our lives, not necessarily kept us well, but prolonged our lives. And that's great. Initially, when I started in medical school back in 1958, medicine was an altruistic field. We went into medicine to take care of people, not to make money. We were going to be okay. We're going to live a reasonably good economic life, but that wasn't the key. If we'd wanted to make money, we would have gone to Wall Street or gone into business, so done the usual thing that we do in a successful capitalistic society, and we have been that, no question about it. We won't talk about crony capitalism. Well, we're going to mention that. That's a problem too. So what actually has changed? What's changed since 1958? Well, what's changed is sickness is something that has become a paying situation. The mantra now of big medicine and big pharma is sickness pays. And you say, well, boy, that's a brash statement, but it's true. It's true. The orientation now is to see more patients in less time, create more big drugs that make lots of money, that are cash cows. And it has turned out, ultimately, because of that mantra, it has gone against the grain and it's gone against altruism. And now wellness does not pay. It's gotten to that point. True prevention of illness does not pay. Okay, sickness pays, prevention is a loser. And unfortunately, that has kind of the aura, the milieu today, and we can change that. And it is changing. And why is it changing? Because you are educating yourselves. You are getting on the web, reading about stuff, checking up, and when you get on a new medication, if you're smart, you check and say, well, what are all the problems with that, and so forth. Your physician has a couple of minutes with you. He can't tell you all of that. And he has a set formula, which is politically correct, and it frequently is useful, not always. And that's what he has to go by. He really hasn't got time to spend. In the old days, we spent an hour with a new patient. On the average, Anshul, how long would you say you can spend with a new patient on a busy day?
On a busy day, 15, 20 minutes.
How about that? Can you get all your problems solved in 15 to 20 minutes? Can he solve them? No. It's not a wonder that primary care physicians, who are the backbone of our medicine, are frustrated and not happy. They're not taking care of their patients. They're seeing X amount of relative value units a day. RVUs, we call them. You are an RVU. You're one RVU. An MRI is 5. So if you just iron it out that way, it's rather insensitive. Well, it can be. There's an incentive to have more RVUs because, business is great. It's great to have a country that is capitalistic, and that's what's got us, where, as I said, where we are. Crony capitalism is another problem, but the fact is healthcare should not be a business. I'm going to say that's not truly out of the box. A lot of people will profess that, but they may not follow it. They may not be able to. Okay. All right, well, so that's a concern, a big concern. And we have to get around that, and that's why we have to start taking care of ourselves as best we can. Now, what has happened to us in terms, here, we spend something like $7,200 per capita in our country on health care every year. The next closest country spends less than half that. Okay, so we must be in pretty good shape. Yeah, we have a lot of wonderful techniques and some interesting medicines and so forth. We should be really at the top of the pile, but we're not. We are something like 37th in longevity now. 37th, though we spend twice as much. So something's wrong, and of course I've intimated what's wrong. If sickness pays, there's no reason to make people well. I mean, that's blunt. I mean, there are very few people who are going to profess, oh, hey, what the heck? I can't wait to have the diabetic population grow because it's just going to make more money for us. Of course it does, but nobody's going to say that. But it's happening, whether they say it or not. It's happening. All right, well, so enough negative. What can we do? We're going to talk about the brain today, and briefly, and there's a lot more in the handouts, so please leave your email and get the PDFs, and I'm happy to talk to people afterwards after they've read them. Well, how many of you have been in a situation where, for example, someone is coming across a crowded room and you're chatting with a group and you know that person and you're going to have to introduce them and you can't remember their name? Situations like that. Or how many of you have put the keys in a safe place only to find them a month later? Well, or a day later, or whatever. Or how many of you have tried to think of somebody's name, as we did in that social situation, can't do it, you muddle through, and 2 hours, a day later, whatever, sometime later, when you're relaxed, the name just surfaces. Okay. Well, if you were 50 or 40, maybe let's say 50, you'd say to yourself, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Okay, you remembered it. Well, that's called delayed recall. That's a brain function, basically, that we can't get around. It starts at about age 5. It doesn't make any difference at age 5 if you forget the milk. Okay, at the grocery store. I mean, nobody's going to think, you're going to get scolded, but you're not going to worry about it. By the time you're 50, you start to worry about it. You say, well, am I on my way to dementia? Cognitive decline. All right. And Alzheimer's is the key disease, if we want, to name it that, because it's the most common one diagnosed today. In this country, at the age of 65, the prevalence of dementia, I won't say Alzheimer's, is 10%. We say, well, that's not too bad. Well, it's not good. It's bad. 10% of everyone over 65 has cognitive decline, has dementia. By the time you reach 85, and a lot of us are reaching 85 now, we may not be well when we reach 85, but we're reaching it, close to 50% have pathological cognitive decline, dementia. Of those 50 people, 30 will have Alzheimer's disease. as best we can diagnose it today. It's not an easy diagnosis, but as best we can diagnose it. So that's extraordinary. That means ultimately that 30% of people who survive to a grand old age are going to be demented and have a degenerative disease called Alzheimer's disease. That's very worrisome. Well, positive. In India, the incidence, the prevalence of Alzheimer's at 65 and 85 is much, much less. Striking. So therefore, there's something about, it's not a genetic thing, there's something about the way we take care of ourselves in the West that predisposes to dementia, and in particular Alzheimer's disease. That's good to know, because that suggests that it's not an intrinsic thing, it's not a genetic thing. Because when folks come, for example, from India or from Japan, where there's a low incidence, when they come here and develop our wonderful Western eating habits, fast food habits, processed food habits, they end up with the same prevalence that we have. So it's not genetic. It's not something you're not protected because you were born in a certain part of the world. Genetically, it's because you do something that's different. And we do something that's very definitely different. We live a Western lifestyle. And a lot of you folks are here because you probably don't. Oh, and that's good. That's positive. So maybe I'm preaching to the choir. But the problem is that the majority of Americans, I would say 3/4, live on a processed food, fast food diet, an unhealthy diet. Now, you'd say, well, why would they do that? I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, why would someone purposefully do that? Well, it's because our institutions have said it's appropriate. Remember that in about 1980, about 85, the American Heart Association came out with a white paper saying, our mission is to lower cholesterol and cut down the eating of saturated fat. Now, we all know that, okay? How many of you think that you should get your cholesterol down and you should not eat saturated fat? Okay, well, there's some of you, but I mean, and some of you may be equivocal about it too, because you've maybe kept up with the more recent appropriate literature. Well, guess what we did? We bought that. The politician, Senator McGovern, in his health commission, went to the American Heart Association and said, Dr. Hansel Keys has presented to us his study of 7 nations and showed that low cholesterol and low saturated fat intake results in lower heart attack and stroke. And I will add on to that, lower incidence probably of Alzheimer's, thinking retrospectively, because that would have been important too. But that's what he said. And he said, and high cholesterol and high saturated fat increases heart attacks and strokes. Pretty striking, because if you looked at his graph, it showed a curve where there was the low and there was the high. It's a perfect straight line right up for those 7 countries. Well, he studied 22 countries. And when you took all 22, the data from all 22, here's what the curve did. Not significant. Completely not significant. Therefore, this huge national change to eating low fat, in particular saturated fat, and low cholesterol foods was a fraud. How about that? Now that's out of the box, because today you're still told if you're 40 or over and your cholesterol is checked, that, oh my goodness, your cholesterol is 200. It's too high. 180 is now the rule. You need to be on a drug to lower your cholesterol, because cholesterol is bad. Even though none of those drugs decrease the incidence of stroke and heart attack. Okay, so you say, that's striking. I don't think I want to get on that. Why would you lower cholesterol, okay, if in fact it is not significantly associated with heart disease or stroke? What is cholesterol? Cholesterol has become a disease. It's not a disease, cholesterol. I'm saying this because this is feeding into a lifestyle that's important for your brain, but your heart, your whole body. Cholesterol is made by the liver, and is sent to all parts of the body because to replenish the cell walls of every cell in your body, including your brain. All right? Cholesterol makes up 25% of the lipids in your brain. Very important. Cholesterol is in every enzyme in your body, every hormone. In fact, it's a very important part of vitamin D3, something that we're going to mention many of us are deficient in. Okay? So you need cholesterol. And cholesterol is an anti-inflammatory. So it is sent to areas where there's inflammation to try to clean things up. It's part of the inflammatory control system. So cholesterol is very important. So to knock it down with a poison, I say poison, a toxic drug, is inappropriate. If you live a good lifestyle, your cholesterol needs go down, and so does the cholesterol. Your liver says, oh, don't need to make as much. That's quite different from taking a drug to push it down. Okay? So, yes?
Are you talking about statins?
Of course.
I thought so. So
I'm being politically correct, but in fact...
I'm bringing it up because my husband doesn't want to take it, so his doctor told him he has to be a vegetarian.
That's ridiculous. But being a vegetarian won't hurt. In fact, his cholesterol will come down as a vegetarian, so your doctor actually is saying the right thing. If only he would say that to his patients and say, don't take statins. Okay. So statins are part of that whole system, that whole fraud, and so are all the foods you see on the shelf that say low fat. I remember one time seeing a packet of sugar that said no cholesterol. Now, really. And now it's of course the big thing is now is no gluten, but we won't get into that. And it has there's some rationale. There's no question about it. But cholesterol itself is, as I want to assure you, is a good thing. Okay? And it's needed. Yes.
So are you saying that no matter like what you're putting into your body, your liver will produce the amount needed?
Absolutely. You can eat 2 eggs a day for a whole year, every day. Okay? Your cholesterol will change 5% up or 5% down. In other words, it won't change. Why? Because your liver will say, oh, good, you're saving me the trouble. So it'll stop putting out as much. So the diet's ridiculous. There's no reason for it. And saturated fat, good saturated fat, okay, fat that's not been burnt, crisped, charcoaled, is good for you. And that includes lard, coconut oil, butter, grass-fed butter preferably, ghee, clarified butter, nut oils, but not the, I'm going to jump around here because we're going to stick with the handout, but not the polyunsaturated soy oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower seed oil, canola oil. Those all have been processed at such high temperatures that they're full of oxidating molecules, free radicals. So they're toxic right from the get-go. You get those essential omega-6, and I think many of you are familiar with the omega-6 versus the omega-3s, the fish oil versus vegetable oil. The necessary omega-6s you get from vegetables. You don't use them separately. Get them from the vegetables, then they're okay. And they're not oxidized, and they're natural. Okay? And the omega-3s are the other ones you get from the sea, basically, and from algae in the sea, and from fish and shrimp and so forth. And those are good. Those are good. All right. So you've sort of gotten ahead of things. The fact is, Alzheimer's disease is more than likely and almost assuredly the result of chronic inflammation. Okay? Chronic inflammation. But so is cancer, so is arteriosclerosis. Oh, there may be some other etiologies, but this is the main one. This is what the Western world has done to itself. We have created chronic inflammation in our bodies. What is inflammation? Well, inflammation is a natural, normal phenomenon that heals injuries. Thank you. Heals injuries, mops up infections, that's for the immune system, and then it backs away, then it quiets down. Once its mission is finished. If you have a chronically irritating substance, agent, that causes chronic inflammation, and so the inflammatory process then starts to spill over into normal tissue. Brain, arteries, and generally all tissues, resulting in that situation, cancer, arteriosclerosis for the arteries, and degenerative disease in the brain, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Okay? And so what are those inflammatory things? Why are we so inflamed? I'm not talking about mentally inflamed, but that's stress is part of the problem. There's no question about it. De-stressing is very helpful because prolonged stress is inflammatory, and inflammatory markers in the blood show it. It's not just a figment, it's there. But what are the things that we really do? Well, I'll tell you what. In the 1985s, we changed from fat to sugar. We changed from fat to sugar. When the big food said, hey, if we can't put fat in food and it's necessary for taste and the whole business of making food delectable, we'll have to change it to something else. So they changed to processed carbohydrates, in particular sugar, and processed grain, wheat in particular. But sugar was the big one. And then shortly thereafter, they found that high fructose corn syrup is sweeter and cheaper. And most of us know now that's a problem, okay? But sugar is too. They're hardly different. They're both made up of fructose and sucrose. Fructose and glucose in combination. And fructose is about 55 to 60% in high fructose corn syrup, and it's 50-50 in sucrose, regular table sugar. So one's just as bad as the other. No, it's no big deal. The more fructose, certainly the worse it is, because fructose is metabolized differently from glucose by the liver, and a lot of the products are quite inflammatory, triglycerides, uric acid. It's very problematic. Raises your blood pressure, causes chronic inflammation, and all these problems that we mentioned, including brain degenerative disease. So it behooves you, if you haven't already, to stop eating sugar or cut it down to a minimum amount. Certainly high fructose corn syrup, if you see that on a label, and you do read labels, I'm sure, if you see that, don't eat it. And that includes a lot of breads, which have high fructose corn syrup in them. Okay, you say, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to sweeten things? My gosh, we all love sweet stuff, for goodness sakes. Well, you all know the latest news, and that is that all the artificial sweeteners cause fattening, okay, and insulin resistance, predisposed to diabetes, just like sugar and high fructose corn syrup. A little slightly different mechanism, but it's real. So you eat that drink that no-calorie soda, instead of 10, 15 teaspoons of sugar, you have a bunch of sucralose or NutraSweet, a number of them, acyl sulfame, so forth, and you end up with no calories, but you end up getting fatter because it tricks your brain and makes you hungrier. It tricks you. That's the main thing, but it also directly affects your insulin sensitivity, so predisposing to diabetes that way. So they're bad too. And there are lots of other bad things to say about sucralose, Splenda, and NutraSweet. Okay, we might mention those in passing when we talk about the gut biome, because they pretty much destroy that, just like antibiotics. Problematic. So what are you going to do for sweeteners? That's the question. Does anybody have some suggestions? Stevia. Sure, stevia is good if you can tolerate the aftertaste, but stevia is not unhealthy. And some of the latest data, not proven yet, but interesting, whole leaf stevia is better than antibiotics for chronic Lyme disease. But wait till that comes out, because that's something brand new. That's pretty exciting, as a matter of fact. Yeah, because that's the problem. Long-term use of antibiotics is a terrible, terrible thing. Okay, stevia may get you around that, but we'll wait and see. Well, let's wait till the day comes. But keep your ears open, keep your eyes open. We'll see what happens there. So stevia is good. Erythritol. Okay, that's a sugar alcohol. And that's not bad. It's not quite as sweet, but that's okay. I think it's called Zero. You can get it in the grocery store. It's called Zero. But make sure that it doesn't have some of the other stuff mixed in. Sometimes they'll sneak in a little Splenda and some of the yes.
Is there one called X that begins with an X, like Xylitol?
Xylitol. Xylitol is just like erythritol, except it's sweeter. And xylitol is a good substitute, but it's some people get pretty gassy with it. Okay, and it's very poisonous for pets.
Yes.
That's the other thing. I don't know if erythritol is or not. I would keep those things away from your doggies and cats for sure. Okay, so so those are some of the things. There of course the other no-nos we do know, and particularly cigarettes. That's hugely inflammatory. We know that smoking does predispose to Alzheimer's disease now. But see, these are all relatively non-specifically inflammatory things. They're not silver bullets, okay? They're not just that one thing that causes Alzheimer's disease. And then we have to go back, and I'll take myself back to 1959 in my pathology class. Yes?
What about honey?
That's a good question. Of course, honey is high fructose. However, honey has some benefits in small amounts. Honey is sweeter than sugar, so that's nice. But that's not the benefit. The benefit is that raw, unheated, unfiltered honey has a lot of polyphenols, antioxidants that are useful. But it has a lot of fructose, so they kind of counterbalance each other. So let's say it's relatively neutral. You can get those polyphenols in other foods and substances without having to deal with the fructose, but they won't be sweet. Okay, so I would favor a small amount of honey as a sweetener, maybe once or twice a day, and don't add any sugar to anything. And of course, I've already intimated, don't eat processed food if you can avoid it. I mean, you may not be able to avoid it all the time. Yes? Maple syrup, okay. We're covering the territory. Maple syrup also has polyphenols. It has been heated fairly heavily. Remember, it's boiled for a long period of time. So they're probably relatively lower. But maple syrup is more than likely healthier, certainly than sugar and high fructose corn syrup. But again, just enough to make things taste a little bit better, but not a complete substitute. The average American today eats 150 plus pounds of sugar a year. Okay, it causes obesity because of the triglyceride formation. Anything you don't burn in the carbohydrates, glucose, fructose, ends up as fat, and not good fat. Okay, and so that's why America has become obese. Oh yeah, well, I'll have to add to that bread. Wheat, not because of the gluten, but because of the glycemic effect. The effect on raising glucose in the blood is the same as sugar. It's a little higher, actually, than sugar. So if you eat a lot of bread, that's problematic too. So I would say that should be on a modicum. Wheat should be at a modicum. I'm not saying stop. And I'm not saying don't eat ice cream once in a while. You got to have treats, for goodness sakes. Okay? And ice cream sweetened with stevia, I bet it's not very tasty. Okay? So what the heck? Let loose. The nice thing about that is if it's whole fat, then one of the more expensive ice creams, the fat's probably good for you. So that may balance a little bit. All right. Well, okay, so any other questions about diet? I think I've said a few things. There's a lot more in the handouts. Yes?
Recently they have come with coconut sugar.
Coconut sugar. Well, coconut sugar, gosh, we're not going to let anything loose. Coconut sugar is actually probably a little bit better than sugar. It has some good things in it. It's not because it's brown, but the brownness suggests that it has polyphenols and a number of minerals in it that are useful. But again, the sugar aspect of it is not good. So it kind of balances again. All right. So it's not all good, but it does work. It's pretty good. I've tried it. It's good. I'm blocking on the other one that's very popular. There's one called monk fruit, which is available, and that's probably okay too. Monk fruit is probably all right, and not in huge amounts. That's a different kind of sweetener. That's like stevia. It's a different kind, so that's okay.
Agave or agave?
Agave is no good.
That's what I thought.
Agave is just fructose. I mean, and straight fructose is a joke. It has no glycemic effect because it doesn't affect insulin. Okay, but it's poison. It's not good, so you don't want to do that. Not pure. So you say, well, why? Then I can't eat fruit. I can't eat fruit. That's a problem. Well, fruit Fruit is full of fiber that counterbalances the absorption problem with fructose, and it's not a big deal. So eat fruit. No, that's okay. Yes?
In regards to added sugars, there's not a huge governing body of laws, whether it's the FDA or WHO, some regulatory agencies said that you should consume no more than, I think it was 12 or 13 grams of added sugar per day for your coffee.
Well, how many grams are in a teaspoon? 3 or 4. Yeah. So that's 3 teaspoons a day. I would be more strict, but that's a compromise. Not good, because all compromises are that's just sad. They're a compromise. So I would suggest using other sweeteners and backing off. And it's difficult to know how much. If you're eating processed foods, you don't know how much sugar you're eating. It's a lot. All you have to do is read the label, and you see on it, it says 10 grams. Oh my gosh. That's 2 teaspoons right in one serving. And it starts to add up. And that's why we eat 150 pounds a year.
The problem is with things like spaghetti sauce and tomato is some of that natural sugar, but it's also got sugar in the ingredients.
Yeah, why you make your own sauce. Okay, let's talk about that, because this is a very important topic. What is the French paradox? You may not remember, some of you are probably too young, some of you may not remember, some of you probably do remember. The French paradox was that they had a diet which had bread and sugar, not a whole lot, but some, and when you look at their stats, they had a significantly lower rate of heart disease and stroke. And we'll presume also probably Alzheimer's and cancer. Okay, well, what's going on there? Well, the paradox was, it's because they were drinking red wine. That's what it came down to for a short period of time. That was great for the wine industry. And in fact, red wine, as opposed to white, has a lot of antioxidants, polyphenols, good things in it. It has alcohol. That's not particularly good, but it doesn't have a whole lot. So it said, well, that's what they do. They have at 10 o'clock, they have a coup de rouge, a little glass of red wine, and at 10 o'clock, the workers, and then half a bottle at lunch and half a bottle at dinner. No, not so much. They don't drink as much as that much anymore. But that was not what was causing the French paradox. It wasn't a paradox at all. It was their diet. I've lived in France 3 times. I've watched them. They go to the market every day to every other day and buy fresh produce. And that's what they eat. They don't eat canned food. They eat fresh produce. That's why the Mediterranean diet is so healthy. Okay. Yes, red wine, extra virgin olive oil, those things add to it. But it's the fresh produce that counterbalance the bit of sugar, the bit of tarts and so forth that they eat, the desserts, which they don't eat as much as you think. They don't eat a lot of that, and the bread, because the bread is a bit of a problem. They don't eat that much bread. It's not like you're eating a loaf of bread a day, a couple of pieces of bread. But all the fresh produce counterbalanced all that, and that's why the French, the Italians, and all around the Mediterranean basin, those folks are so healthy. Of course, extra virgin olive oil is a big deal, I must say. It's a nice additive to all of that, and that's present all around there too. But but as soon as processed food gets into the game, things change. Okay, and we're in the middle of that. We're in the middle of that. Okay.
How do you feel about when you put sugar to something like, I'm thinking of kombucha, when you have the yeast in the back.
Well, it's fermented.
That ferments the sugar.
Yeah, that's okay. That's probably okay, because that cuts way down on the sugar. It ferments it, and you have the probiotic effect, and the sugar level itself goes down. You end up with some acetic acid vinegar, which is not bad. That's not bad. I mean, there's a whole group of Vermonters that I know that drink apple cider vinegar every morning. Okay, that's a good thing to do, because it cuts the glycemic effect. If you drink.
Do you think the sugar just gets changed into a different?
It's changed into a different molecule. Sure, because of the fermentation. I mean, just what happens intermediary between a sugar and vinegar? Alcohol. in the fermentation process. But by the time you've gone through that, the alcohol becomes fermented, and you end up with acetic acid, vinegar. And basically, kombucha is vinegar tea. It's vinegar tea. So that's fine. I mean, there may be a little bit of sugar left, but not much, so that's not too bad. There have been some controversies about kombucha, but they seem to have died down. Infections and so forth, that's highly unlikely at this point. And it's a very good probiotic. And if anyone wants to talk about probiotics, we can, because it's very important that we keep our bowel healthy. It's 80 to 90% of our immune system. 80 to 90% of our immune system, and we have to keep it healthy. We didn't know that. 10 years ago, we didn't know that. Now we know that, and we know when you take antibiotics, you kill off a lot of good bugs. There are about 100 trillion, okay? That's a hard number to wrap around, bugs in your gut if you have a normal large bowel in particular. Okay? We have about a third of that if cells in our body. So it's another organism. A huge organism. And it's extremely important to keep it healthy because it keeps us healthy. It protects us from a whole lot of foreign agents, inflammatory agents. So I recommend everybody eat fermented foods when they can. Make their own kimchi, make their own kombucha, make their own kefir, yogurt, or you can buy it as long as it doesn't have fruit and sugar in it. And that's a good way to replenish or maintain your gut biome. And the other thing is to take a tablet or capsule in the morning with the bugs in the capsule, a probiotic capsule, and with water so it doesn't get, before you eat, so that the acid in your gut, in your stomach doesn't kill the bugs. And then go ahead and eat your breakfast 15 minutes, half an hour later. But I recommend for most, particularly elderly people, to do that because they've tortured their gut for so many years in our milieu that they need to replenish that. It's amazing how helpful that can be. And it's been shown now that it's very important for brain health. It's very important for brain health. The gut and the brain are connected. Everything is connected in our body, basically. Everything is. Okay. There are a few things. There are a whole bunch of entities, supplements, and foods that have been purported to be useful in keeping our brain healthy. And let's do that last. Let me just mention exercise. How many of you realize that exercise done appropriately is a superb therapy and prophylaxis in brain health? A number of you do. Well, appropriate exercise. Now, if you do aerobic exercise for an hour, you'll get something out of it. Okay? You'll get a lot more out of 15, 20 minutes of exercise, and including interval exercise. I'll tell you why in a second. But what does that mean? It means if you like to walk or swim or row or bike, take your choice, work on a treadmill, whatever you prefer, you warm up with that, whatever that exercise is, for about 5 to 10 minutes. Just at a good pace. Say, walking's the best exercise of all, because everybody can do it. Most everybody can do it. Walk along at a pace so you can still talk, but you feel like you're moving along. You're not just dawdling. Now you're warmed up, and then you start doing your intervals. For 30 seconds, you walk as hard as you can so that you're so short of breath that you can't talk. Now, if you're in not very good condition, it won't take much to do that. But as time goes on, if you keep doing it, you'll get to walk faster and faster. Okay. Then at the end of that 30 seconds, you stop and you walk slowly and catch your breath. It may take you 30 seconds, a minute and a half, and then do it again, and do that 5 times. You can do it up to 7 times, but 5 times is adequate. What does that do? That does something that the aerobics will not do. I used to bicycle 40 miles every morning before work. Did that for 25 years. And I said, I got to be so healthy, it's just incredible. Well, that wasn't as good as what I've just been telling you. Because what I've been telling you, the interval system brings out growth hormone, which is reparative all through your body, brain from the head down. Brain neurotrophic factor, which stimulates what we now know exist, stem cells in the brain, to turn on and proliferate, and it also stimulates nerve cells to spread their connections. The brain neurotrophic factor. And the intervals is what bring that out. The aerobics will not do that significantly. And best of all, for those of you who feel, if you've ever been depressed, you get endorphins after heavy workout. Those of you who've done heavy workouts might know what those are like. For the next 2 to 3 to 4 hours, you feel great. Okay, you just haven't got time to be depressed. And that's been shown in double studies, I wouldn't say it can't be double blind, studies to be better than placebo in treating depression, as opposed to the SSRIs, which have not been. They're no better than placebo. That's another issue, but that's important to know that. And I might also mention in passing, there are other things that are great for depression, omega-3s too. But this exercise thing is very important. Now, how many times a week do you do that? 3 to 5. You've got to take some days of rest, but 3 is adequate, 5 is probably better, and more than that's not necessary and may be counterproductive. Okay? So that's easy. So I can tell a patient, and when they say, "Oh, doc, I just haven't got time. I'm too busy." Well, too busy, yeah. I say, you're not too busy to do, say, 20 minutes. 15 to 20 minutes and do these intervals. So think about it. It'll be a great benefit, okay? So I'm able to get a lot more cooperation that way, and people start to take care of themselves better. Yes?
You talked about the process naturally produced. Also, can you talk about...
Naturally produced?
When you talked about food that is processed and
yes.
natural food. Also, can you talk about organic and inorganic food that's been so big?
Well, okay, he's inorganic and organic food. Yeah, well, it's not inorganic, but non-organic. Organic food is, if you can get it, it's the best way to go, and you know why. Not because it necessarily has better nutrition, but it actually, it turns out it does in many cases. Okay, GMO corn has much less nutritional benefit than regular corn. Forget about the herbicides. Okay, but the reason you eat organic food is to avoid the herbicides and the insecticides. They are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Virtually everyone in this room has Roundup in them. Bad. It's bad stuff. You can't help it. 90% of the corn that's grown in this country is Roundup ready. So it's loaded with Roundup. Same with the soy. Same with cotton. Same with sugar beets. So you can't help but have Roundup, and that's not good stuff. So what we're doing is we're basically polluting our external and internal environment, and people are beginning to wake up to that. I mean, I have to say it, Monsanto is going to fight it like crazy because it's, they make billions and billions and billions of dollars on this, and so you tell them, hey, we're not going to buy that stuff. We want you to label GMO, because that seems the only way you can do it now. And they say, we can't do that because then they won't buy our stuff. Well, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe there's a reason for that. So at any rate, that's the reason for eating organic food when you can get it. Now, some foods you don't have to worry about whether they're organic or not, like things with peels, and thick skins that you get rid of, avocados, citrus fruit, so forth. Okay. However, if you want to make zest out of lemons, make sure they're organic. Okay. Because remember, what is you say? Well, Roundup. They told us we can drink that stuff. Well, that's not true. But Roundup definitely affects the biome. It kills the bacteria in your gut. So we are fighting that all the time. Another reason to take a good probiotic and eat a lot of fermented food. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so now let me mention just a few. There are lots. Yes, Anshul.
Question. You talk about the exercise. Is the interval exercise better than aerobic exercise for losing weight?
Neither one is super for losing weight. Okay? Don't expect exercise to lose a lot of weight for you by itself. Dietary habits are important. You're going to lose a lot more weight if you stop eating wheat for a month than you will if you exercise more. Okay? If you stop eating sugar, if you stop eating high fructose, you'll lose a lot more weight. And the easy way to do that is just to avoid canned food. Okay, and then avoid free sugar and so forth. And if you cut down on bread for a month, I guarantee you'll lose weight. Unless you don't eat bread now, and then you've got to do something else, because obviously there's something else you're doing that's wrong. Yeah.
best kinds?
Well, we went over that. It's probably stevia. Until something better comes along. Monk fruit may turn out to be important, but stevia probably is the one I would recommend. The rest... Well, we said erythritol is, yeah, we've already covered that. Come up afterwards and talk to me, okay? Yeah, okay. Well, so what are some of the things that are anti-inflammatory that are maybe useful for our body and our brain? Well, the one that comes to mind first, you remember, let's go back. In India, there's a very low incidence of Alzheimer's disease. So the question is, why is that? What is it about the diet there? Well, the only thing that was consistent about India versus other countries is that people eat curry, and lots of it, okay? Okay. I stand to be corrected, but I don't think anyone can correct me. People eat lots of it. The studies show that the turmeric, content, the turmeric, is about half a gram to a gram a day people take in curry. Well, curry has cumin also. It has cumin, it has black pepper, it has a number of things, and there are different curries, but the basis is turmeric. Okay, so someone said, well, maybe that's the answer, because that's the only unique thing we see in that society versus Western society. So they took an Alzheimer's model, a mouse. You say, oh dear, here we go, in the lab. Mice aren't people. Well, it's the best we can do for a starter. And there is a good histological, that is under the microscope, Alzheimer's model in the mouse. They put them on the strong anti-inflammatory derivative of turmeric, curcumin, and lo and behold, it prevented the mouse Alzheimer's and reversed it. Striking. Shocking. Not shocking. Okay, that's great. Well, that's a mouse. Subsequently, some clinical studies have been done now that are very positive. We await more information. It's being fought like crazy by Big Pharma, who have a number of nostrums, as you may know, that do not cure the disease, do not prevent the disease, and have a mild symptomatic effect and a lot of side effects. So they're working like crazy. I mean, if you could create a drug that cured or prevented Alzheimer's, for sure, well, I mean, that's worth billions. That's a cash cow. So it's not surprising they're investing lots of money in that, and they have been ever since I started neurology back in the 60s. Okay? Because it's a large population, and it's getting larger. Okay? What I'm trying to say is the way we keep it from getting larger is to live an anti-inflammatory life. I would recommend to you that Dr. Andrew Weil has a website, and he has created an anti-inflammatory pyramid. So we don't need to talk about anti-inflammatory diet. We mentioned the Mediterranean diet, but he has an anti-inflammatory pyramid. Look up Andrew Weil, WEIL.com, and then search for his pyramid. That's a pretty good guideline. Pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. Nothing's perfect. Okay, so curcumin is a pretty exciting entity, and the data is getting better and better all the time. Well, it's a very powerful anti-inflammatory antioxidant. It's been shown to be a tremendous adjuvant to chemotherapy, cuts down on the complications of chemotherapy, and it's also a very potent anti-cancer agent on its own, for 5 different reasons. So that's pretty impressive. And I'll mention here that the good source for everybody, if you haven't already accessed it, on the web, is Green Med Info. GREENMEDINFO.com. It's a free app, and you can look up all kinds of stuff. There are at least 600 or more references, or even more, on curcumin, and its marvelous effects on many disease processes. It's an amazing, it's the latest do-all substance, and it's certainly impressive. Coconut oil is pretty impressive too. Okay, we're still going here. Okay, but I won't talk about coconut oil. You can look that one up. You'll see that in Green Med Info. They'll give you a lot of information on that one. Very good stuff. Yeah?
Are there any studies on the Parkinson's showing that turmeric also helps?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Are there any studies, Parkinson's disease?
Yeah, well, Parkinson's, anything I say about Alzheimer's, you can roll that over to Parkinson's. There's some things that are relatively a little bit different, but it's an inflammatory process too. It's an oxidation inflammatory process. Oxidation, you've all heard about oxidations and antioxidants. Oxidation is toxic. You can't help but have oxidation in your body because you depend upon oxygen, and that's a spin-off. So you have to quench that. You have to develop antioxidants in your body, and there are a number of them that we have naturally, but also you have to have external ones to protect you from those things. Okay?
Parkinson is an imbalance of neurotransmitters between dopamine and the
That's not the cause. That's the cause of the symptoms. That's not the cause of the disease. Okay? You got to be careful. The big pharma approach is let's fix the downstream. Let's add the dopamine. Well, yeah, that's fine. That's great, but that's not curing anything at all. It continues to progress. What we're interested in is keeping it from happening and trying to stop it and hopefully to reverse it. Okay? I mean, that's the best approach. Yes, dopamine lack is what we see in Parkinson's. Okay? Okay, and we give L-Dopa and people get better, no question. But that doesn't solve the problem. Okay? It's helpful. Yeah. Okay, so what are some of the other things that, well, magnesium. Magnesium is deficient probably in 80% of us, if not all of us. And that's why, unless you take supplements. Why? Because magnesium is no longer in our produce, organic or not, because the magnesium has not been returned to the soil. And so the plants have less and less. They're becoming anemic. Remember, magnesium is what iron is to us. Iron is in our hemoglobin. Magnesium is the center of chlorophyll. Okay, so plants' hemoglobin, which is chlorophyll, has magnesium. Plants are becoming more anemic. Hopefully, some organic plants, the greener the better. Okay, the greener your kale, the better. The paler, not so good. Magnesium is deficient because of this, though. And magnesium is necessary in about 350 known reactions in the body. It's extremely important. It's not just important for keeping calcium from settling in soft tissue. It does that. It's important for all kinds of enzymatic reactions. It's very important for glucose metabolism. So you have to have it. It's very important for cardiac rhythm. Now, when you measure blood magnesium, it's almost always going to be normal unless you're severely, severely deficient. When it goes down in your blood, it means your body magnesium, which is 99% of it, has been depleted, and it can no longer replenish the blood for its electrical purposes. Okay, on the heart, you want to keep a certain level in the blood. So the simple thing is magnesium has no real downsides. So I suggest that's one area, one substance I suggest everybody supplement. Well, that's important, because if you buy the magnesium at the drugstore, it's magnesium oxide, and it's only 2 to 4% absorbed, and to get enough on board, you're going to end up with diarrhea. Guaranteed. Okay? If you take the little soda pop bottle for your colonoscopy or sigmoidoscopy, mag citrate, that has 20 grams in it, sure, that's going to flush you right out, clean as a whistle. What I'm suggesting is about a gram, 1/20th of that, say mag citrate a day. That's the easiest one to get. And there's one that gets into the brain, and that's, to me, that's important as a neurologist, and that's magnesium threonate, 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 threonate. That one gets across what we call the blood-brain barrier, very important for brain function, but also gets to the rest of the body. Okay?
Do you have to worry about imbalance of other minerals such as calcium and potassium?
Well, I mean, we'll get to that. And then the potassium you need lots of. So that's where you need your fresh vegetables and fruit. And that's where you get your potassium. And usually you can get enough. You don't need to supplement that. As long as you're eating fresh produce, that's not a problem. And that'll balance itself out. That's why you've got kidneys and you've got a liver. They take care of imbalances, especially your kidneys. Now, your calcium is a good question, because the next thing I'm going to mention is vitamin D3. How many people here take vitamin D3 supplements? Ah, great! So, of course, traditional medicine now has bought it. It took a while, If I suggested 15 years ago that someone take vitamin D3 and my colleagues heard about it, they say, what are you, some kind of nut? No. Remember, many years ago, some of you don't remember, we were told by the dermatologist, when you go out in the sun, slather yourself. Okay, with sunscreen. Avoid the sun. It'll cause basal cell and squamous cell carcinoma and, Lord forbid, melanoma. Okay? Yeah, if you do excessive sun, yeah, it might do that. But the trouble is, when you did that, you walked out of the house with sunscreen on, you blocked the formation of vitamin D3, which is really a hormone, not a vitamin, formed in your skin. Vitamin D3 is extraordinarily important. And your question about Parkinsonism, most Parkinson's patients have very, very low D3, so it may have something to do with etiology. That's not guaranteed, but it's certainly striking. Same with MS. Most patients with MS have very low D3. In the tropics, there is no MS. How about that? Or virtually none. Pretty striking. So those are some interesting things about D3. But D3 is very important for brain health. And so what you need to do, probably the best thing to do, is to get a measurement of your D3, your 25-hydroxyvitamin D, which is a very readily available test now that's paid for by your insurance. And if it's 30 or below, you need to supplement. You need to get your level up to 50 to 70 or 50 to 90. And that may take 5,000 to 10,000 units a day. Not 400, not 800, they're recommended, but 5 to 10,000. Okay? There's no downside except if you're taking calcium supplements, which many women are taking with their D3. The calcium supplements with D3 can be problematic because if you're not taking magnesium, and you're not taking a brand newly discovered vitamin K2, you're ending up with calcium in your arteries, in addition to bone. So magnesium is important to aim to keep the calcium in the blood from precipitating and allowing it to go into the bone, where the magnesium is an important element too. But vitamin K2, not K1, K1 and K2 are vitamin, there are other Ks too that are complexes in green vegetables, okay? Kale, so forth. And if you're on Coumadin, you're told you can't take that. You can't take K1, which is problematic. Yes?
Because the supplement industry is regulated by the FDA, how can we ensure that we are taking supplements that are...
The only thing you can do, that's a good question. How can you be sure that the supplements are bona fide, they're not adulterated, and so forth? You can't be sure. The best thing to do is to try to go with the bigger companies that are like Swanson's or, God knows, Vitacost, or, there are a number of them that are good. Vitamin Shop, they're brands that can't afford to cheat. Okay, if you get some little fly-by-night group, they might but a few have been found to put fodder in capsules and not what's supposed to be there, or less than supposed to be there. Okay, yeah. So that's all I can tell you. You can't be sure about medications either. That's the real problem. Yeah.
How do you feel about papaya?
Well, wait a minute. Let me ask that again. Let me finish the K2. It's very important. If you're taking D3 and calcium, you must take a source of vitamin K2. Even if you're on Coumadin, K2 is not a clotting vitamin. You need to take it because Coumadin blocks K2 and results in calcium in the arteries. So you're taking Coumadin to prevent clots, but you're building up bone in your arteries, arteriosclerosis. So you need to take the K2, and what that will do is it will keep the calcium from going into the soft tissue, particularly arteries, and it will redirect it into the bone, where within the bone it also works on the architecture of the bone. So it's very important. K2 in the form that's probably the most potent and is available. Well, you can get it by eating grass-fed butter. You get a certain amount. You can get it by eating brie, Gouda cheese. It's in those, particularly if it's from grass-fed, because the grass-fed animals will have a lot more K2 in their milk. Okay? You can't, they make the K2 out of K1 in their gut. We can do that a tiny bit with our microbiome, but not enough to make any difference. Okay, so you need to supplement that. And the best source is from, believe it or not, from fermented soy, natto. It's a common dish in Japan, but it's not. Unless you're used to it, it's not very pleasant. It's smelly. I mean, if you like really stinky cheese, you might be able to handle it. But the fact is, it's a very high content of vitamin K2, and extracted from that, you can get it in what's called the MK7 form of K2, and that has one capsule a day of about 100 micrograms, lasts you 24 hours, and that protects you from the calcium problem. Okay? It has other effects too, but that's the important one. So I want to mention that. Now, first, you mentioned papaya. Can't answer you except, if you mean juice?
The pills, papaya pills.
Oh, well, I mean, why not just eat papaya? But it's sure, certainly it can't be bad for you, but that's a lot more expensive than getting papaya, and it's available almost all the time in most grocery stores. Just peel it. You know, of course you would. That's not a very good peel to eat. So I would stick with the actual fruit itself and not get, just because it's expensive. And the capsules also sometimes have a variety of chemicals in them, unless they're organic or they're vegetarian. Yes?
D3, you said 5,000 to 10,000 a day. Is that for a maintenance? Or is that just...
I would say that if you live above Atlanta, Georgia, okay, you should take in the winter 10,000. Okay, and in the spring, summer, and fall, if you're where we are, take 5,000. Or in the summer, if you're willing to go out with bare arms and bare legs for 15 or 20 minutes before you put the sunscreen on. And use an organic sunscreen that doesn't have if you read a whole bunch of chemicals like avobenzone and so forth, don't use that because they're carcinogenic. That's why cancer of the skin has not decreased. It's increased, if anything, since we made that edict about using sunscreen. It's because the sunscreen causes the problem too. So stick with things that are based on zinc oxide and coconut oil and so forth, which have an SPF factor. Zinc oxide is probably the best, not titanium, zinc. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So for immobile patients, what are your recommendations on vitamin D3?
And on what kind of patients?
Immobile patients.
Immobile patients, well, you know,
They don't even expose any sun exposure.
yeah, they need probably 10,000. But as I said before, the caveat is if you can get it done, get a measurement of the level. You might just be taking enough D3, though in most cases I think not. In this audience, yes, some, but in most cases would not be. So I would say, yeah, just go ahead and take the D3. As long as you take the K2 and the magnesium, okay, and you're covering yourself. Because D3, I mean, I have given patients with MS 25, 30,000 units a day with K2 and not seen any bad effects. If I hadn't given the K2, however, I would expect to see some bad effects. Yeah.
How much K2?
100 to 200 if 100 micrograms a day will do, okay? If you have arteriosclerosis, I would suggest 200 because there's evidence that it pulls the calcium out of the arteries. So,
Too much of it toxic?
not that we know of, but I mean, it's toxic to your pocketbook.
Yeah.
You know, you reach a certain point. Reach a certain point. Okay. All righty. Well, we haven't covered sleep, and I'll just very quickly say that 7 to 9 hours at night in an appropriate sleep state is very important for a long period of time. Less is very bad for your brain, and it does predispose to degeneration. It's a stress because it's chronic stress, chronic inflammation. If you're having trouble getting to sleep, you know, just make sure that you don't have all the electronics around you. That you don't eat a big meal within 2 hours of going to bed, that you don't drink more than 1 or 2 glasses of wine at 5 or 6 with your meal, okay, so that you end up having a poor sleep because of the alcohol metabolism. There are lots of things that you can do that'll help you with sleep, and avoid sleep medicines because sleep medicines do predispose to dementia. So do antihistamines. So do PPRIs. Okay, you know, I mean the proton inhibitors. Excuse me, the proton inhibitors like Nexium. Those things all predispose to dementia for a lot of reasons because the acid blockers cause malnutrition. We know that. Okay, and basically. Taking a nap, if you can do it, for half an hour or so is not a bad idea. And it's a wonderful way to calm yourself, to lie on your back, and do the breathing exercises, if you've learned them. Deep breath through the nose for count of 4, approximately. Hold for a count of approximately 7, approximately. And then breathe out against slightly pursed lips for about 8. And do that about 5 times in a row. And you'll be surprised if you're lying on your back. By the 5th time, you'll find yourself falling off to sleep. Try it. I'm not going to guarantee that. It sure works with me. It's better than reading. And reading can be a problem, especially if you have a Kindle, because then you have that electronic problem, and that can slow down your onset of sleep. Yes? Melatonin is the darkness is the critical thing. Your natural melatonin is suppressed by light. So when you go to bed, you want your room to be very dark. And if you're taking a nap, put a mask over your eyes. Simple. Get used to that. Just put it over your eyes. You cut down the light. That'll improve your nap too. Melatonin supplements are the ones that you get are derived. Some of them are derived from cow urine. They're from a number of sources. They have not been shown to be terribly effective with sleep. So some people, yes, but I'm not sure if that's not placebo. I would suggest that you eat a banana about an hour before bedtime, because that has a significant amount of natural melatonin in it, about 1/3 to 1/2 a milligram. That's enough. Once you take big doses of melatonin, it's counterproductive. Anything above 1 milligram turns out to be counterproductive anyway. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that the melatonin that you get in tablets doesn't work, but it's not as effective as people thought it was. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the placebo effect. If it works, it works. Okay. If the placebo gets you from being depressed or gets rid of symptoms, that's just fine. Except I can't tell you, look, I'm going to give you a placebo, and you know it's going to work better than medicine. That's not too convincing. So that's the problem with that. If you believe in what I tell you about a pill, even though it might be a pill that's not terribly effective objectively, it's going to be much more effective. I'd rather give you a pill that has very few side effects and a very strong placebo effect, if I can do it. Because your mind, your brain, is the placebo effect. Your brain is able to control a tremendous number of symptoms by centrifugal turnoff, from the top down, turning off noxious input. We've shown that over and over again. It's definitely there, and you can marshal that up. And a good physician with a good aura, with a good connection, with good transference, can amplify that. Okay, I guess I've used up my time.
You can go on, I think everybody's enjoying it, sir.
Okay, well, all right, okay.
You said we're supposed to, do we refrigerate probiotics?
That's a good question. Do you refrigerate probiotics? It's not clear, but I would, just because it's not clear.
My bottle says...
After you open it. Yeah, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would it be sitting dry in the bottle? Yeah, but I would refrigerate it as soon as you get it, just because that might just preserve the bugs a little bit better.
And you're saying do it on an empty stomach.
Do it on an empty stomach with a glass of water so you don't stimulate acid formation. Some of them you can take with food. The ones that are enteric coated, the little pearls, you can probably take with food because they're going to take a long time to dissolve, and they're going to be a long ways down by the time they'll be past the acid, and they're acid proof. But the regular little capsules you probably should take just with water in the morning before breakfast. Yeah. Yes?
Are plant-based vitamins or probiotics better than the regular ones?
Well, some of them are. Yeah, I mean, plant-based vitamin C is better than ascorbic acid. Yes. So if you get your vitamin C from a kiwi plant or from a watermelon or from an orange or a grapefruit, that vitamin C is going to be much more potent than the powder. The powder has potency, though. It's just not as potent. Okay, it's not. I mean, it will definitely prevent you from having scurvy, the powder. Okay, but so will one little lime. Yes.
Something we haven't talked about, I know it's a huge controversy, I just wanted your opinion. Fluoride in our water.
Oh my goodness, okay. Yeah.
As a neurologist, do you know, what's your opinion on that?
Well, in 1964, I was working at Bellevue Hospital in New York, and I came across an article it was titled Fluorosis. And it was about a patient whose cervical spine was overgrown, a youngster, overgrown because of fluoride, caused excessive overgrowth, what we call spondylosis. It was a problem. And I said, gee, that doesn't sound like good stuff. But subsequently, fluoride was put in everything. It was a byproduct of certain industries, and they didn't know what to do with it. They initially thought they'd make insecticide out of it, but then they found out that there was a little town in Texas where people had very few cavities, and there was a lot of fluoride in the water. That's not science. That's supposition. But that's how it all grew up. And now we all have fluoride in it. It's a burgeoning industry, and it's very hard to put it down. In Europe, it's been blocked in almost every country. It's deleterious to the brain, it's deleterious to the bones, it's deleterious to teeth. It's just plain bad, okay? And the slick coatings on frying pans, those are perfluorinates. You get more fluoride from that. They're toxic. Use ceramics or stainless, not aluminum. Ceramics or stainless. Get away from those slick Teflon-coated pans. Okay, so fluoride's not a good thing. It's definitely not good for your brain. No, it increases the toxicity of aluminum, okay, which you get in your vaccines. So the combination of, in your kids, getting fluoride plus vaccines with lots of aluminum, not good. Okay, it makes it much more toxic to the brain. Okay. Yes?
Probiotics for oral hygiene.
What's that?
Probiotics for oral hygiene.
Oral probiotics? Are you talking about in the mouth, you mean? You mean swishing around the mouth or swallow?
Just open up capsule and just gargle it up.
For oral hygiene. Yeah, well, there are some tablets that have probiotics that you swish around. That's not proven yet, but it's suggestive that might be useful in keeping down the Streptococcus mutans, which causes plaques, and it's maybe good for your breath too. But I'm not sure that that's any better than brushing your teeth with xylitol or coconut oil. They cut down on strep mutans terrifically. So if you want to keep plaque down, keep cavities down, brush your teeth with coconut oil. It works just fine. Or xylitol-based toothpaste. Because xylitol inhibits the formation of those bacteria. And it's also useful in a nasal spray called Xyloclear for sinusitis. So xylitol is good stuff. So I would say that's better than probably spending the money on a probiotic tablet. And I'm not as familiar with those studies. I've looked at them briefly. You'd have to study that and see and make up your own mind. But those other alternatives are good. I know that. Even turmeric is good for that. Brush your teeth with turmeric. It won't turn your teeth orange. In fact, they say it'll turn your teeth more white. I can't speak for that. I've got red wine. Oh, really? For the turmeric? All right. Well, mix a little turmeric with coconut oil and brush your teeth with it. Not bad. It's not going to affect my wine-stained, coffee-stained teeth, and I don't care. I'll deal with yellow chiclets one way or the other. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, yeah.
Are protein powders, are these smoothies,
Protein powders? Yeah, well, you just make sure it's pure protein powder, and there's something to not overdoing the proteins in terms of your kidneys. If you have any kidney disease, I would suggest you keep your proteins at a reasonable level, not overdo it, so that you're eating high proteinaceous food all day long. But yeah, they're not bad. Probably better powders are those green powders that have all sorts of things like wheatgrass and chlorella and so forth. Those things are probably better as long as they're not adulterated with any chemicals. Those are probably the best support. And they'll give you vegetable protein, but they'll also give you a lot of other good things too. Yeah.
Can you please share your thoughts between the probiotic versus yogurt?
Well, any of the fermented foods will, particularly, kimchi, sauerkraut that have live cultures, kefir, and yogurt will have a very high content of probiotics, and that's good. So if you eat a lot of those, you may not need to take a supplement. Don't eat them with sugar, though, because that cancels out the value pretty much. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What's your thought on CBG oil?
What's the what?
CBD oil.
CBT?
CBD.
CBZ.
CBD, cannabinoid oil.
Give me the whole name.
Cannabinoid.
Oh, canola.
Cannabinoid oil. CBD.
Oh, I can't.
Cannabinoid.
Cannabinoid. I can't answer that. I don't know. That's a new one for me. I'll have to go look it up. Cannabinol. Cannabinoid? No, I'll have to look it up. I'll research that. Thank you. Sorry, I can't help you. Yes, in the way in the back again.
So in addition to things like diabetes and Parkinson's, what about autoimmune diseases?
Speak up a little bit.
What about autoimmune diseases?
Well, autoimmune diseases are an inappropriate inflammatory phenomenon, and it becomes chronic. Okay, and that's problematic, and there are lots of potential reasons why we develop those. One of the latest thought is that a lot of them are caused by a leaky gut. And not celiac, that's a major leaky gut, but something less than that. And there are a number of things that cause leaky gut, but right now it's thought that gliadin and gluten is important probably for most of us, but we can handle it. We can compensate for a lot of bad things. But gluten may be one that's bad for everybody to a small degree, and it may let in a fair amount of foreign proteins by opening up the gut walls a little bit. And those things may have common antigens to different tissues in the body, joints, arteries, muscles, so forth. I think if you keep that in mind, you may cut back on autoimmune. As we get older, we become more and more challenged. We have become challenged over the years with lots of antigens, and sometimes if our immune system isn't healthy, it reacts inappropriately, and so that may be part of the thing. It may be a falling back. So if we go to this new lifestyle, we may be able to improve on that. We know that exercise improves the immune system. We know that. We know that a lot of these supplements improve the immune system. Okay, so if you go on that, particularly if you're young and healthy, the chances are maybe later in life you're not going to have that problem, and your chances of making it to 100 or more in good shape, okay, go way up. Go way up. We're living longer now. Yes, not as long as some other nations. We're living longer because we're keeping people alive with urgent emergency measures. They're not dying of the heart attacks. They're sort of staggering along with stents and angioplasties and so forth. We shouldn't have to have those. Okay, frankly, most of them we don't need, but that's all right. That's another issue too. Okay. Yes. Wait a minute, where are you? Well, that's a source of magnesium. Yeah, the magnesium oil. You can put that on. That apparently is. You put in your tub. You can put magnesium salts in your tub, and you'll absorb a fair amount. That's probably useful, but you're not going to be doing that all the time. But the transdermal, if it's not terribly expensive, is a reasonable alternative. Okay, one more.
That statins weren't necessarily good for you.
They're bad.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're not necessarily good. They're bad.
Okay. So if you've been on them, I've heard that you have to be careful when you get off of them.
You have to be careful when you get off any medicine or any supplement that you've been taking long term. As a general rule, even though it's not always necessary, you can't be sure. Your body has accommodated what other bad side effects there are frequently, and when you go off fast, that accommodation is a problem. So you need to taper. Some things you need to taper a lot longer. For example, antidepressant SSRIs, you need to taper those over months. Okay? Prednisone, you need to, if you've taken it for more than 2 weeks, you need to take 2 or 3 weeks to get off slowly. So there are a number of medications that take a long time. I would say on the average, 8 days to 2 weeks for most things, tapering down. Oh yeah. And aspirin, if you're on a baby aspirin and you want to get off, and there's plenty of reason why you might, do not stop it suddenly. Take at least 2 weeks to get off, because there's a rebound effect if you stop it suddenly with clotting and strokes and heart attacks within the first 2 weeks. But if you taper it, no problem. Yep. Should we stop? We should stop. Okay. Thank you. Actually, I'm not going to be able to walk off the stage. My knees are absolutely killing me. Unfortunately, I did bad things to my knees when I was a youngster.
You need some help?
I need a chair. I need a chair to sit in for a few minutes.
What kinds of things are you doing to help your knees?
Well, right now, I'm going to sit down. Put it right behind me. I've squeezed all the juice out of my knees. There we go. There we are. Now, I can't see anybody. All right. Yeah, so what I have done is taken all the usual supplements, and they've helped, but it's getting to be that time that you may need to have the knees replaced. But that's a saga for most people. It's about a 50-50 good when you do that. I'm a very active person. I row, I bicycle, I can still do it. I fly fish, I do all those things. When it wakes you up at night, it's time to think about having it fixed. My orthopedist said, when you're 90, you can do it. Okay, I've got a couple of years before I'm 90. I might do it before that. But glucosamine, UC2, I've done them all, and they probably help with TAD. Okay, glucosamine makes you very gassy, just like xylitol, but it seems to help a little bit, and you have to keep taking it. UC2 is probably useful. Hyaluronic acid that a lot of people put on their skin is probably a useful supplement by mouth. They're all useful, but they don't grow the cartilage back. When you damage it, when you do naughty things like I did, which I do over again, you pay the price.
One last thing I was going to say is I'm working with an author about oxalates, and it's not really out in the mainstream yet, but oxalates, and that's one of the things.
Say that again?
Oxalates.
Oxalates.
Yeah, oxalates in general.
Well, I can't. Oxalates. I can't. If you give me a specific oxalate, can you give me one?
Well, like magnesium oxalate or calcium.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't. Yeah. The magnesium or the calcium probably is good, and maybe the oxalate causes better absorption, but I don't know that. I would suspect magnesium oxalate, if there is that entity, is probably absorbed better than magnesium oxide. That's a big problem with magnesium. I mean, even magnesium citrate is 50% absorbed. Threonate probably a little better. Glycinate probably a little bit better. You can look those up. The Green Med Info is, look up Green Med, get onto the web with greenmedinfo.com and look those things up. There are lots of data. And the nice thing is they don't sell stuff and they have references. Yeah, Mercola and Blaylock and alternatives and those are all pretty good. They're not 100%, and they do sell things. They have to. They want to stay in business. But that is a conflict. Whenever you sell something that you're bragging about, it's a conflict. But those guys are very good. And Mercola, for example, touches on medical issues unrelated to supplements and things. Talks on things like vaccines and so forth. And so he's worth reading. His opinions are worth reading. Yeah. Okay. I think I can make it out of here now. Oh, thank you. Here. Take that down, put it on a chair. That's great. Thank you. Oh, that's okay. No, well, yeah, I'm going to have to. We got on the steps. You're all saying, why the hell hasn't he had his knees fixed? Because I wait till the last minute. All physicians are very bad patients.
Do you have a website or?
I don't have a website, but the handouts you can get by leaving your email, and we'll send you the PDFs. I think they're 4 now. Yeah, the PDFs will cover a lot of this territory. They're not just oriented towards the brain; they're oriented towards healthy living. And as yoga and meditation are an extremely important part of stress management. There's no question about it. And I definitely practice what I preach. I have a son who's a yoga master and a daughter who welcomes yoga classes to her place in Costa Rica. So that I'm very much involved with that. Vegan, I do not push veganism. I push vegetarianism, if that's okay. I think lacto-ovo vegetarians that's just about right. Okay, with a few fish once in a while. Okay, so I'm not that extreme. Veganism means you really have to research what you are missing, because you can't help but be missing B12 and a number of minerals, so it needs to be done. So vegan then would be fairly healthy. Yeah. We are predators, by the way. So, eating meat is not something that's unnatural.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves.